Well, let's continue the conversation now. Judicial Service Commission spokesperson is Mvuzo Notyesi, who joins us now. Mr. Notyesi, good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time. So the MK party has decided to go back on its word to hold protests outside, I suppose, the venues of where these interviews will be taking place. But they do say that even though they have decided they're not going to protest, they're continuing with the legal action because these interviews will essentially be taking place under a dark cloud. Do you agree with that sentiment, that the interviews are going to take place under a dark cloud?
Firstly, let me greet you, Koli, and the listeners, and thank you for having me. Firstly, the JSC interviews will not be continuing under any dark cloud. They are lawful interviews. Everything is ready. The JSC is properly constituted. There's a quorum. The interviews will be normal, just like the previous interviews. There's no dark cloud.
There is some sentiment today in one of the Sunday papers suggesting that this matter of Mr. Hlophe, or should I say Dr. Hlophe, not participating, it did somehow go to a vote, and there was only one member who did not agree with the interviews continuing with the exclusion of Mr. Hlophe. Are you at liberty to tell us who that person was?
I mean, in respect of what? In respect of the decision to proceed with the interviews by the JSC?
Yes.
No, not really, but I mean, as you understand, the JSC is deliberate. Normally, there are robust discussions of the JSC on any particular matter, and they vote. But unfortunately, I'm not at liberty to say who said what, because all members, they were dealing with the issue. It was an intense discussion. There was an analysis of all the issues. So this was a product of a thorough discussion, and that's how we arrived to this particular decision. So I would not be in a position to say so-and-so voted this way, so-and-so voted that way.
Yeah. I know that this matter has been ventilated in the courts, Mr. Notyesi, but for the JSC, how important was it that Dr. Hlophe is excluded from participating until, I guess, his matter is fully ventilated in the courts and, I suppose, put to bed?
Yeah, firstly, I mean, from the JSC perspective, the most important thing is that all members designated for the JSC as a starting point, they should all be participating. If it was for the JSC, all those that are designated by various bodies in terms of the constitution, they should be part of the JSC, including Dr. Hlophe and everyone that is designated. But in this particular instance, the JSC found itself being bound by the decision by the order of the Western Cape High Court, and therefore it has to abide by the decision of the court. Yeah. And bear in mind that during those proceedings in the Western Cape, the JSC did not oppose the application of the DA, nor did it support the application. It only elected to abide the decision. By its nature, it did not participate into the main dispute between the parties themselves. It had elected to abide by the outcome of that particular court. And therefore, once the outcome was brought to the JSC has to respect that outcome. How it respects it, it has to respect the order of the court. Yeah. That is why, at the end of the day, we have to proceed without the presence of Dr. Hlophe. It is not the desire of the JSC, but it is simply because of the reason of the existence of the court order.
As we move on from this point, of the 54 candidates that are going to be interviewed for these over 20 vacancies, were there any candidates that expressed discomfort with the possible inclusion of Dr. Hlophe as among the JSC commissioners? Were there any of these candidates that possibly said they may have been uncomfortable with Dr. Hlophe being part of the JSC?
No. There was not even a single candidate that has expressed any objection against the presence of Dr. Hlophe. Certainly, that one was not submitted to the JSC.
All right. Let's then talk about the importance of filling these 21 vacant posts. How urgent is it?
Firstly, generally, as one would understand, high courts have backlog in terms of cases. There's shortage of judges in the country, even if the full complement of judges, the full complement was, meaning that all posts were filled up. There's always a need to have additional judges in view of the volume of work of the high courts. Now, in this particular instance, you have various courts that, I'll make an example. KZN, they have 6 vacancies, which include the position of the deputy judge president, which is the most senior judges, meaning that the JP of that division has a burden of administrative work. So it was very, very important that this position must be filled in terms of ensuring that the high courts are able to deliver judicial services. And that is in line with the Constitution. All the disputes are referred to courts for adjudication, and the Constitution requires that these must be dealt with speedily. But if now the court does not have judges, it means it cannot deliver. We cannot fulfill constitutional obligation. They cannot fulfill constitutional obligation. And the backlog will keep on rising. This was extremely, extremely important that these interviews proceed and that these positions are filled up.
Yeah.
That's very, very important, as I'm saying. We already in the high courts have a backlog of cases,
Can I focus the spotlight purposefully on the Western Cape? The judge president position has been vacant for some time since the departure of Dr. Hlophe. In that particular court, has there been any leadership challenges since the post became vacant? And if so, how important is it that leadership is installed there?
Yeah, let's start by this. In the Western Cape, you have a very unpleasant situation where you have an acting judge president, you have an acting deputy judge president. That is, the position at the leadership are all acting, and that has prevailed over a year, if you can calculate from the time when Dr. Hlophe now was impeached. It means the position of the judge president has affected even that of the deputy judge president. Invariably, where you have acting positions, there would be a question of indecisiveness on matters. There would be uncertainty when the leadership is not confirmed. There will be every challenge that is attended to leadership. So the Western Cape has been a typical example in terms of the leadership positions being on acting basis from the judge president to the deputy. Even though we don't have a specific case where we say there was this particular challenge, but it is just obvious that we have an unstable leadership of the judiciary in the Western Cape. That is the first and foremost that one has to realize, that it is undesirable to have everybody acting in the highest position, and that is also one of the most busiest division in the country, and it is a big division with many judges, and is also a court that has more work, that is in terms of cases that are adjudicated before that court. So you need a stable leadership of the judiciary. That was the biggest challenge I can mention, though I cannot say because there was no judge present, this and this happened, a particular incident, but just on its own, the fact that there were two acting persons on senior position, that on itself is a serious challenge.
Final question to you, sir. The actual interview process, in the recent past, there was discomfort about the quality of the interview process, judges being asked political questions, and there just was disquiet about the manner in which these interviews were conducted. Is that something that the JSC is going to pay closer attention to this time around in order to ensure that the people that are being interviewed, they are questioned on their abilities and indeed the knowledge of what they are coming into?
Yes. As we recall, I think sometimes, not this April, I think the previous year, the JSC said and made reflections on itself. It reviewed its criteria, which was then published. Public comments were invited in terms of that criteria that was developed. And that criteria is on the website of the JSC. Everyone understand what is the criteria for appointment of the judges. And the questions that are asked would be based on that criteria, and the candidates are at all times protected in terms of questions that are unfair, and the Chief Justice has more powers in terms of control of the interviews of candidates. But as I'm saying, one of the good things is that the JSC had reviewed all its policies, including the criteria, and therefore, as I can confirm that all candidates will be treated with fairness. Of course, questions would be robust. Because these are permanent appointment. The judge's appointment is appointed for life. You don't remove a judge, so you have to make sure that judges are scrutinized and that people that are appointed are suitable. But of course, there can be no questions that impugn their own integrity. And that attack their dignity cannot be tolerated. And the JSC is guided by its own criteria that is made available to every citizen, every candidate, every person that we will be attending the JSC. It's also there at the website.
All right.
So I can confirm to you that the interviews would be free, would be fair, and candidates will be treated with dignity. And the public is invited to follow the JSC proceedings throughout.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, Mvuzo Notyesi. He speaks for the Judicial Service Commission. Thanks indeed for your time tonight.